Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of an Involved Review. I'm your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and as always, I'm joined by none other than the man who has seen more wrestling than anyone in the known multiverse, Caleb Stovall. Welcome back, man.
Hey, what's going on, man? Dude, I am excited about this one, and this is definitely going to show you why that statement is true.
By the way, if you're watching this on video, you may have noticed that there was a new animation there to wipe us in rather than our normal fade. So that is a new
Dude, I
thing.
saw that. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's a new thing. We actually want to give a shout out. We started using that on our previous episode, which was kind of every now and then we do a little special edition, which is outside of our wheelhouse, which is pro wrestling. And we actually did a special on the Netflix Bo Burnham special Inside that just came out. Definitely check that out and check out our episode on it. Dave Foster returned to the show to do that with us. He was originally going to join us for the Dynamite Kid episode of Dark Side of the Ring, which we are still going to do, but that's all going to be in the future. And I think we're probably going to get a different guest. It may be him, it may be somebody else. Who knows? It'll be a surprise
Yeah,
whenever we work
dude,
it out.
that was awesome. I saw that posted and everything. It makes me like kind of want to go watch it, but then at the same time, it's like I don't know if I want to. Like, it sounded weird. Like,
It is it's super weird. It's funny, dark, weird, all at the same time. I definitely recommend checking it out. I've watched it like 3 times now,
okay.
and it is just you're. I mean, it's a masterpiece, but it's completely incoherent. Also, you just have to go watch it. I mean, there's no way I can explain it.
Well,
But
it's got to be so it's got to be somewhat at least I need to check it out because, people are talking about it.
right, it's definitely, and that's actually one of the reasons that we wanted to do a review. Is I'd made a post and I was like, why aren't more people talking about this? Like this is probably like anyone who is kind of around our age is really going to identify with this. It's really, I'd say anybody who's like 25 to like 35 ish right now will really identify with this. And then I think more people would too, but I think that age range, it really sums up like kind of how we see life and like how the things we've experienced and stuff like that. It's a very cool thing, and I would definitely encourage people to check it out. And hey, whether you love it or hate it, you could come check out our review of it. Spoilers, I kind of liked it. So, but if you're joining us on video or if you clicked on this episode, then odds are you know that our main event tonight is none other than the A&E biography on Mick Foley. Um, I had pretty much given up on these A&E specials until this one because this one I thought was fantastic and told us a lot about Mick Foley. Some of it we knew, but it's not like some of the other folks where they've been in our face for all these years. Like Mick Foley has kind of been out of the limelight with WWE for a while.
Yeah, dude, I was excited about this because I'm a huge fan of Mick Foley. I'm just gonna be honest because, like, I legit think that after watching a lot of his matches, after seeing this documentary, because here's what happened, right? When I saw this documentary, I was like, well, I'm going to want to watch, a lot of his singles matches, and I'm going to want to watch that other documentary that he had for all mankind, but it wasn't up on the network or the Peacock version of it yet. And then guess what? They happened to put it up like
Right.
a week later.
That just jogged my memory for something before we get too far into this.
Yeah.
So Dark Side of the Ring, we made our season 3 predictions,
Yeah.
and China was at the top of the list, and she's not on the lineup. But then Vice did a documentary about China,
Yes.
so I'm
I
gonna say that's a win because I think maybe they just didn't want it to be part of Dark Side of the Ring.
I guess not. I haven't checked it out yet. I
I
need
haven't seen it yet, but I will, and I mean I think we should cover it.
Well, I was going to ask you, are we going to cover that? Because I kind of just figured that we would.
Yeah, let's just commit to more things. We
Of
don't have
course.
enough of a back catalog already. We don't already have to do Bret Hart's biography, The Dynamite Kid, Dark Side of the Ring, the top 10 sins of Vince McMahon. You know, we'll just put another one on the list.
Hey, you know what? It's more wrestling for me. I don't care.
That's it. That's true. That's true. Um, this was cool though, man. I really liked. Um, it. I did not know that Mick Foley and Kevin James were like childhood friends. That's crazy.
Yeah, they said it in his other documentary that they did for WWE a long time ago. For it's the one that's called For All Mankind, basically. Um, and he said it, but Kevin James wasn't in it or anything. But there's a picture of them. But then, like, I saw him in the documentary, and I was just like, "Yes, Kevin James is in this!" Like, that is so awesome because I'm not gonna lie to you. King of Queens is like one of the top sitcoms of all time.
I can respectfully disagree, but sure.
Why?
I just it doesn't.
I just said
It's not.
like sitcoms in that genre, you know, like The Friends and
I think when I was a kid, maybe I liked it, but I wouldn't be able to stomach it now. But I'm not really a big sitcom person either, so that's probably why.
oh that you know.
Um, but I mean, I used to watch it as a kid and thought it was funny, and my parents loved it. So um, that I don't know that I've ever seen For All Mankind. I think I've seen. I want to say WWE a long time ago maybe put out a documentary about Undertaker and Mankind's feuds with each other, and I watched that. And then of course I saw Beyond the Mat, which heavily featured Mick.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
then I also took like 1,700 photos of him once. We'll get into that story later.
yeah. I get you
So
on that one.
what's that?
I said I was just saying I get you on that one.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. That's definitely later in his career. So yeah, so one of the cool things that we found out early on in this is apparently Dave Meltzer is responsible for kind of getting a lot of eyes on Mick. Um, he listed him as good as any indie wrestler in the country. And shortly after that, he receives offers from 3 different large promotions, and he ended up signing with the CWA in Memphis and eventually World Class Championship Wrestling.
Yes, and here's my question before we go any further. When the hell did Dave Meltzer become friendly with WWE?
It was surprising to see him in this, and I'll tell you exactly why they put him in this. They put Dave Meltzer in this to shit on Jim Cornette. No, that's why. I guarantee you that's why.
And it's funny because Jim Cornette should have been in this because he is a fan of Mick Foley.
Jim Cornette should have been in all of them.
Well, true.
Instead of these completely
These
unqualified.
podcasters, these radio hosts.
Yeah, if being a wrestling fan and having a podcast is enough to get you on the A&E biographies, then where's our invites?
Yeah,
Because I think that actually we are more qualified than some of these people they have on these things.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you and I have both spent more time in the wrestling business than some of these jackoffs they have come on here and talk about this shit like they were there. And that's what gets me about all of these. Thankfully, it wasn't really extensive in this one. Most of the time in this one that they have these idiots on here is when they're talking about the Hell in the Cell match. And they're just like, I remember watching that as a kid, blah, 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 which, I mean, fine. And I think that is one of the most famous events in wrestling. We'll definitely talk about it more, but
Yeah, we'll get into that.
I was glad that the idiots were kind of regulated in this. They weren't all throughout the whole thing. It was just it was just that one really segment that they had them in.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. But dude, I love hearing his life story because his life story is unlike any other, is it not?
I mean, it really is.
Like it's so weird because here is this guy who was known for going through barbed wire and these death matches and having this hardcore style, which I'm sure we'll get into all this. And then you see like him as a child, you see him as like a guy behind the scenes. It's like it's a completely different person, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, he was just. I mean, he kind of. I mean, I guess Dude Love is probably the closest to who he really was as a person. Um, Out of the gimmicks.
I guess, and I love seeing the home video footage of him and stuff like that. Like, I know we've seen that like a million times, but I still like seeing it, you know?
The thing that I loved in this documentary was Jim Ross when he talks about how genius it was that Mick wanted to have all three personas, and really four, because eventually they also just had him as Mick Foley.
Yeah.
And that meant that he had three different action figures out. And this is, this is a time before now where, now it's like whatever's in your contract is pretty much what you're getting paid. There's not really these big paydays anymore. But back then, I mean, the guys were making more on merchandising
Yes.
and pay-per-view buy rates than they were doing on, just their day-to-day. I mean, that was where they were making the real money.
And here's the thing, I can guarantee you that they were making a lot because I remember as I am a child, right? And it when I'm growing up, right, it's the Monday Night Wars. Like they are at their peak. You have, WCW going on and WWE going on. And I remember like when I would go to the toy section, like I would be buying those toys like crazy, and I knew like tons of other kids were buying those toys like crazy. Like
Right.
wrestling was on another level at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, wrestling was at the highest peak that it's ever been, and that it's ever gonna be at that
Yeah.
time. And I mean, we can't really say ever going to be, but I can. In our lifetimes, I don't think we're gonna see wrestling make a resurgence to be at the level that it was in the Monday Night Wars. It's just probably not going to happen. That was just a perfect mix of talent, culture, and the way that the business evolved.
Yeah.
Because we kind of got to that point where it was like wrestling was what we would consider to be old school today for so long. I mean, over 100 years technically. In the mainstream, we're looking at like 70 years. And then it suddenly wasn't, right. We had the NWO, we had the Attitude Era. Those things made wrestling into something that we've never seen before, that nobody had ever seen before. Now everybody's seen everything, and so you're never. I mean, you just can't get. You're not going to get to that point again. You're not going to have this huge revolution in wrestling again. And so yeah, you look at that situation where he had three action figures on the market at the time when it's at its absolute hottest that it's ever been. That's a ton of cash.
Yeah. But, he didn't start off that way. As you were pointing out, he started off in world class championship wrestling, you know, where he cut his teeth, and then he would eventually go to WCW, and that was where like he really started taking like the big bumps.
Yeah, I mean, they talked about the automobile accident where, he showed up with the teeth missing, and Jim Ross was like, "Oh man, this is actually great for the gimmick," and that kind of became part of it. And when he had the big match with Vader and lost a chunk of his ear
Yes.
in WCW, that like made like international headlines. Maybe not headlines, but it made the papers and the dirt sheets.
Yeah. Let's talk about his WCW run for a minute because here's how I said he had some of the best matches. Uh Dude, that feud with Vader was amazing.
It
Like
was.
it was different too because WCW had never really done like a baby face like Cactus Jack like that going up against a monster heel invader. You know, Sting was clearly the guy, right? And it's
Right.
funny because when Sting was getting really hot and he was the world champion, they needed a villain. And Jim Ross advocated for Mick. He was like, I'm telling you, he can put Sting over, and Sting needs a good villain. And he had some amazing matches with Sting. Like, I love the Bash at the Beach. I think it's Bash at the Beach 92 like street fight that they have. It's not even for the world title, which I thought was kind of stupid. I was like, man, they should have put the title on the line, but whatever. It was still an awesome matchup. And then like I love the feud with him and Vader. And then that matchup with him and Max Payne versus the Nasty Boys. I'll never forget this. Spring Stampede 1994. Max Payne, Cactus Jack versus the Nasty Boys for the WCW tag titles. It is a Chicago street fight. It is amazing. Like, dude, this was hardcore before hardcore was a word.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I'm a huge fan of Eric Bischoff, but it's interesting. I feel like I've said that a lot over the last couple of weeks. I'm a huge fan of Eric Bischoff, but
Yeah,
um,
I know, and I'm kind of the same way because here's the here's the thing, like WCW failed obviously because Bischoff was obviously not the head guy. Like there was no head guy. That was the problem.
Bischoff was the head guy for a little while,
He was.
but at some point he wasn't, and you get into the, I don't want to make this a WCW thing, but you
Yeah.
get into the later eras and it's like they don't have their own camera crews. They're sending Turner Sports people to shoot the shows, and they don't know anything about wrestling. I mean, it's exactly the kind of situation that Vince McMahon put his own company in today,
Yeah.
where like half the people working there in the office don't know anything about wrestling,
Yeah.
and they want a bunch of people that are writers and producers that don't know anything about pro wrestling, which is stupid.
Oh, yes. Can I talk about that real quick? I saw that. There was actually a report that one of the writers was talking to someone. I don't even think they were talking to like a wrestling thing, or they might have been talking to a wrestling forum. I don't know what they were talking to, but they asked him. They said that yes, I am one of the writers of WWE right now, and I think there's a guy, Bobby. I think his name is Ashley or something. I don't know, but I know that he was doing this thing with these guys called the Hurt Business. They were like cool or something.
I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's why they lost Mark Henry to AEW, because he wanted to be a producer. He wanted a job in the office, and they didn't want to give it to him because they don't want wrestling people back there. And so, I mean, now he's with AEW. So, is what it is.
Yeah.
But back to Mick. Like I was saying, I'm a big fan of Eric Bischoff, but as we have found over the last several weeks, he didn't always make the right decisions. Just like Vince McMahon hasn't always made the right decisions. But there were a lot of people that Eric didn't see a lot of value in. Stone Cold, Pillman, Mick Foley, that would go on to be huge stars elsewhere, to his detriment, unfortunately.
Yeah, but kind of in his defense, and I don't really want to say like in his defense. I don't know, but like he was also saying that like look, it's not necessarily that he didn't see anything in him. It was because he felt like he was a liability.
And that might be true, but I mean, shit, just a few years later they let Pillman do all that crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
and maybe it's a thing where Bischoff, that early he couldn't afford the liability, and after he had made Ted Turner, millions and millions of dollars, then I guess maybe he had more play by the time Pillman was a
Yeah.
thing. But it wasn't that much later. And I like I said, I'm a Bischoff fan. I'll defend him. But it's like, nobody makes the right decision every time. I think the only person that has an amazing track record, and is still not flawless, but the only person that has a truly amazing track record when it comes to talent in the wrestling business is Jim Ross.
Yeah.
Because Jim Ross, everybody we've mentioned, Jim Ross said they thought they were a star.
Yeah.
And everybody that walked through the WWE's doors from what, 97 to what, 2005, 2006, you know, I mean, you know,
Yeah, and we could go on and on about that, but obviously he wasn't going to fit in WCW any longer. So he goes to the most obvious place, ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling,
well,
right?
he made a stop in Japan first.
See, no, I think they got this wrong. He did the IWA stuff while he was in ECW.
That's true.
Because here's the thing. Here's what they forgot to mention. He went to ECW because uh there was a little bit of a talent exchange at the time.
Right.
And that's how they got the Sabu versus Cactus Jack, dream hardcore match at the time.
Well, you're right. Yeah, I mean, he kind of did that. He did them at the same time, and he also did. And of course, they'll never mention this, but he worked for Smoky Mountain for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and he also did well, I think he did this after the first time he left WCW, but he basically did UWF.
Yep. 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 Well, I mean, he was on the Herb Abrams documentary episode. He talked about that for a while.
Because
So
he was on every single show.
yeah, yeah,
He
um,
was. Like,
yeah, he was. Um, so Jim Ross and Pritchard both take a liking to Mick. They both want to sign him to the WWF at the time.
yeah.
And Vince is like, I don't fucking want this guy. Which, you know,
Well,
I mean, I think that kind of played out over the whole rest of Mick's career to present day. That Vince was wrong about Mick and never really wanted to truly admit that.
yeah, and I agree with that, but we have to talk though first before we move on because I wanted to talk with you about this, right? We have to talk about his IWA King of the Death Match run. Okay.
Mm.
We have to talk about that stuff. And the reason that we have to talk about it and you have to mention it when you talk about Mick Foley and his career, because I don't care what you think about the deathmatch stuff today. I don't necessarily like the CZW stuff. Sometimes the Game Changer Wrestling, whatever. Some of the other stuff. But ECW would not exist and hardcore wrestling would not exist if it were not for Mick Foley and Terry Funk.
I mean, here's the thing: is like, I agree with Cornette on like a lot of things, but hardcore wrestling's not one of them. But when I say hardcore wrestling, I'm talking about Mick Foley, Terry Funk. I'm talking about the match that Foley has with Orton, which did not get as much. I was really hoping that they were going to spotlight that in this. And I mean, they have so much to cover, so I understand. But holy shit, man. Like, that match is so good.
Well, what about his match with Edge?
Edge at WrestleMania.
I mean that was amazing. But I mean, dude, okay, I've never seen, like, I saw one time the IWA King of the Deathmatch stuff, and it was a long time ago. And you want to know how I saw it?
How's that?
This is so fucking stupid. But I saw it when ICP did the whole dubbing over or something like that. Like ICP did the commentary for the deathmatch stuff. It was terrible.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, it was. I mean, ICP and terrible kind of go hand in hand.
so it was terrible. So I couldn't really enjoy it. And then I finally found like a YouTube where it has commentating it. Get this, I'm not even joking. All right, so you remember the old ROH matches with Samoa Joe?
Of course, I remember everything with Samoa Joe.
So okay, you remember the announcers Dave Prazak and the guy that Dave Prazak, and he did the call for Nigel McGuinness and Brian Danielson. So that guy, I don't know how they did this, but they did a dub over of it, and he and that guy from the Nigel McGuinness match are
Right?
commentating the whole death match tournament.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I can deal with this because they
Right.
took it serious. They called it still like a sporting event, like they didn't talk over it too much. They kind
Right.
of let it play it out, and I liked it. So it had everyone. And dude, here's the thing, like, here's what I wanted to mention about this, right? People say obviously the CZW stuff, that's garbage. Okay. I can throw that in there. Okay. But when I see people like Cactus Jack, Terry Funk, and not just those guys, but Terry Gordy was in this deathmatch tournament. Terry Gordy of the Fabulous Freebirds with Michael Hayes, who currently works in WWE.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of examples of good of good hardcore matches. Like I mean, look, Bubba Ray Dudley's hardcore title run.
Yeah.
Fantastic. DDP and Ravens Bowery death match
Yeah.
from WCW. Now the like 400 times Raven tried to do it again after that sucked. But that match was great.
Well, and there was stuff that was good from ECW, but here's the thing. Jim Cornette likes to rag on that stuff. Like people like him and stuff like that. But here's what he fails to mention. He was on cards with the NWA at the time where even the NWA title was defended in a barbed wire match.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean,
they had those matches. It wasn't anything new necessarily. It was Japan doing it, and Onita, I guess, was just known for that kind of stuff, you know?
I think he just, he's really not specific enough when he talks about hardcore wrestling because there's a big difference between hardcore wrestling and deathmatch wrestling.
Yeah.
And the things Tunk, I don't know where the fuck that came from. That I guess I combined Terry and Funk into one word. So the things that Terry Funk and Mick Foley were doing in Japan were called death matches at the time, but really, I mean, today we would call those more hardcore matches because when we think of death match, especially now after this season, Dark Side of the Ring, everybody thinks about like Nick Gage hitting people with light tubes and shit.
Uh Maybe because dude, like that IWA King of the Deathmatch 1995 tournament,
I mean, they were nuts, yeah,
it was brutal,
yeah.
but still it felt controlled. If that's possible.
And then on the other side of that, you have I hate to mention this all the fucking time, but you have the exploding ring bullshit that they try to rip off from Japan,
Uh,
where it's literally just a bunch of fucking Walmart fireworks and shit, and clipped barbed wire that's not hurting anyone.
yeah.
And oh my god, man! Like, anyway,
No,
I don't want to talk about that match anymore. I
no,
think I need. I
that
think the
was
next time I
not
talk
good.
about that match, it should be with my therapist.
No, I got you on that one, and it's a black mark on the AEW's record. I get it, but hey, it happens. But you know, there had been a ton. There have been a ton of barbed wire matches that have been great, though. Because I go back to one. One of my favorites is the Barbed Wire Massacre Six Sides match with Sabu and Abyss at Turning Point 2005. That's one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time.
Yeah, and of course they didn't get into his TNA run, which
They
you know,
just mentioned it.
yeah, it's not his best stuff, but he had some good stuff. I mean, and obviously Abyss is a huge fan of Mick's. I mean, Mick Foley is the Bruiser Brody for Abyss. So, um, okay, so he gets to WWF, um, at the behest of Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard. And Vince literally only hires him because he wants to prove Jim Ross wrong, which, in Vince's defense, that probably didn't happen for him very much. So I could see why he would have wanted to do so.
Well, he was also desperate at the time, so he was just like, screw it. Why not?
Right. Yeah. So he comes in,
Well,
he's
really,
doing
what and I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry about that. But here's the thing. In ECW, this is where his brilliance really started to come out.
right.
And it's funny that we say that because it's ECW, but see, in ECW, he knew that the fans wanted hardcore wrestling. They wanted that from Cactus Jack, that was what Cactus Jack was known for. So he intentionally did not give it to him. And
Right.
he would cut those promos. I'm hardcore. I'm hardcore, making fun, showing his family and everything. And his dude, that promo where he went off, like he was just like, those fans in Philadelphia wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, you selfish son of a bitch.
Yeah.
That's like, dude, it's so brilliant. Like his stuff really started to come out. That's when JR and Bruce Pritchard, Mick kind of popped back up on their map, and they were also able to show a little of that to Vince.
Right.
So that's what somewhat gave him the green light.
And this is pretty common for people to come into ECW and Paul Heyman to go, just do fucking whatever. And they really get to show the creative side of themselves. And it gets over, and then you have the Vince McMahons and Eric Bischoffs of the world that see it. And that's one of the things we're lacking today, I think, because none of the major places are going to do that. And if they do, so it's twofold, right? So there are places that are willing to go, hey, go do whatever the fuck you want. But those places don't have people who have an eye for talent like Paul Heyman.
Well, it's kind of hard to be Paul Heyman.
But it is what it is,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he comes into WWF.
Yes.
We finally got him on board. We have talked about the fact that let's not get into the Undertaker stuff quite yet. But I mean, we talked about, any of his matches with Undertaker. Eventually people just kind of went, all right, well, there are no rules. you know. But they did talk about HBK, and this was interesting, about Shawn Michaels bringing Dude Love into WWE, basically. So Bruce Pritchard checks out the tapes, because that's what you did back then, and he convinces Vince to let him do the character.
Yes.
So now we got two faces of Foley in the company.
Yes. Yes. And the way that they bring in Dude Love is tremendous. Like, you got to admit, it's great stuff, is it not?
It is great stuff, and the thing about it is, I love how all of the characters are so obviously Mick.
Yeah.
And the fact that the fact that they never tried to hide that, because that would have been a really carny wrestling thing to do.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't do that, and that this took place in the Attitude Era, I think is what really made it fantastic. Because Mick Foley, I mean, if you can argue this all up and down, but at the end of the day, Mick Foley truly is one of the biggest stars of the Attitude Era. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
honestly, like other than the top four, which I mean, obviously that's Austin, Rock, HBK, Undertaker. Mick Foley's like right there at number five, and honestly, due to the fact that HBK wasn't around for so much of the Attitude Era, you almost have to put him in front of HBK.
Yeah, I mean, and I can see that, but dude, you've seen that match with him and Sean, right?
Yeah, it's
That
fucking
match was
great.
amazing.
Yeah, and that was what the only time they ever faced, right?
Yeah, it was. That's crazy to think about, but that match is incredible. It's basically the perfect match to describe Mick Foley. And look, yeah, him and the Undertaker, I get it. They threw out the rules, but I was not complaining, and I
Right.
never have. Those matches are amazing.
Those matches
Because
are fantastic. I mean, every damn time, and they would always find some way to push the limit.
yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of people doing pile drivers on the show. All right, cool. I'm gonna go outside. Oh, a pile driver on the outside's not. No, no. We're gonna peel the mats back, and I'm gonna hit you with a pile driver on the concrete.
Yeah.
And it's really important too. And one of the coolest things about this is Mick is very specific. He says, "I'm not a masochist. I don't enjoy pain necessarily. I just have a much higher tolerance for it than most people." And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, if you watch Beyond the Mat, you have to be thinking that this dude is completely out of his damn mind, and maybe he is.
I don't know. Like it's interesting. But you heard why he did it. In his childhood, he went and he hitchhiked to the Garden, and he went and he saw that night Jimmy Snuka. I know we've seen the Dark Side of the Ring and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Whatever.
fuck Jimmy Snuka. Anyway,
I got that, but for him, that moment, that was what got him into wrestling and stuff like that. That was what really he was already a wrestling fan. But then like he saw that he was like, I want people to feel how I feel in this moment right now.
right,
And so that's just kind of that's why he wrestled the way that he wrestled. And those matches with him and Taker were amazing. That match with him and Sean was awesome. The matchup with him and Triple H, like the rivalry, not the later one that he would, retire first off from, but the earlier ones, the
right.
ones in like 97 when Triple H, was still somewhat being punished
Yeah.
at the time.
Well, I mean that Hell in a Cell that they had was incredible.
You mean the cage match?
Was it a cage match with Triple H?
Yeah,
I
yes.
thought they had a Hell in a Cell.
They did, but that was like that was in 2000.
Gotcha.
I'm
Okay.
talking about in 97
Right. Right.
when Triple H is still Hunter Hearst Helmsley
Right. Right. Yeah.
and him and China had just gotten together.
Right.
That was an amazing rivalry because that was when you not only involved Dude Love, but you involved Mankind. But that was also when they brought in Cactus Jack, and that is one of the greatest Raws ever.
Yeah. I agree.
From Madison Square Garden, because on that night, that was when Stone Cold stunned McMahon for the first time ever. And then, that storyline obviously didn't go anywhere. It did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course not.
Just that didn't go anywhere. But then after that, they go to Cactus Jack versus Triple H in a street fight. And when they did the promo was brilliant. Having Dude Love come in and then having Mankind and then Cactus Jack is back. And when he said Cactus Jack is back, the place lit up.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they went nuts. And then he came out, dude. That match is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I know I keep going back to the Orton match, but he did similar thing when Orton attacked him, and he did the promo as Cactus Jack, and then everybody went ape shit because it was like, okay, then we're gonna see something crazy now,
Yeah.
and it was. I mean, so speaking of crazy, let's talk about it right here. This is the place, man. Let's talk about one of the most famous matches in in all of wrestling. I mean, when you look at it, it's very easy to say, okay, we're a bunch of wrestling fans sitting around. Okay, you want to talk about top matches of all time? Okay, well, we got WrestleMania 3, Hogan Andre, obviously. We got the Savage Steamboat match. We got Hogan and The Rock. You got any of the times Rock faced Austin.
Bret
You
Hart.
have Stone Cold and HBK with Tyson as the referee. I mean, we think about all these matches, right? But if you ask an average person, the match that I think of people our age or a little older than us, the match that they know about. I mean, I have friends that don't give a single shit about wrestling. They know about this Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker and Mick Foley because it is such it, I mean, it is such a brilliant match, even though both of them were like very severely injured. Well, actually, Undertaker's foot was like already broken, right?
Yeah, that was what everyone was worried about going into it.
Yeah, and I mean, Undertaker's like, screw my foot. Have you heard what this man is trying to do? I mean, Undertaker did not want to throw him off.
No, in fact, in his book, Mick says that when they were going over it, like Taker looked up at the cell, and then he looked at Mick and he goes, "Cactus, why are you so consumed with trying to kill yourself?"
Yeah, man.
Like, and this was Mick's reaction. I mean, it's gonna suck. At like we haven't built up enough for this matchup. And this is the problem with Vince Russo booking right here. This is perfect example 101 of Vince Russo because he just puts matches or gimmicks on things at times just to do it.
Right.
Like with no buildup. He's done that with the Buried Alive matchup. He did like he booked that on SmackDown. It's one of the best SmackDowns of all time, by the way. And it again involves Mick Foley
Right.
with
Well,
The Rock, Big Show, and Undertaker. But
well, I think in this instance, in just this instance, I think it helped. And the reason I say that is because, if they had built for 3 months and, interacted on Raw or whatever, all the way leading up to this thing,
yeah,
and then this is like the blow off to some feud or whatever, I honestly don't think. I think it still would have been over as hell, and I still think Kane and Austin would have been completely fucked no matter what.
yeah.
But it was like it was a Hell in a Cell match. People had seen the first one, and they're like, okay, well that was Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. What's Mick Foley gonna do? How's it gonna top the first one? It blows the first one out of the damn water, and the first one's a great match.
No, the first one's amazing. It's one of my favorites.
But this one, I mean, this defined Hell in a Cell. This is the reason that prior to them making it a stupid annual show where they just put people in a cell for no reason.
Yeah, that's like this last one that I saw. I was completely disgusted. I was like, they've managed to make the Hell in a Cell look completely just useless.
It used to be like the ultimate way to settle something.
Yeah, it was. And real quick, I know this. I mean, this kind of has something to do with Mick Foley when he did the commissioner thing. But one of the best storylines from a storyline perspective, I thought, and one of the best book matches of 2000 was that Hell in a Cell at Armageddon 2000, where it was 6 men and it was 6 of the top superstars. And it created this awesome, like, war story, basically. Like,
Yeah.
it was amazing. It's storytelling at its best, and stuff like that. But this Hell in a Cell is so memorable, not just because of like what happens in it and stuff like that, the imagery, But JR's calls, dude, on these are like just so like memorable. Not just the good God Almighty that killed him, that killed him. Like I love when he brings out the thumbtacks and he's just like, and they're just like, oh, oh my God. And Jerry Lawler's just like, what is that? Thumbtacks. This is off the page. And then he just goes, oh my God, a choke slam on the tacks. And then my favorite was like when he grabs him like for the choke slam and he goes and he's just like, oh, what a sadistic thing. Like just everything about it. Just it's but you can't script that.
Dude. I
Like,
mean, that not only is the commentary amazing,
yes.
but you got to think.
Terry
So
Funk too needs
yeah,
mention of this.
yeah, because the way, I mean, I don't know how much he had to sell that shit. I think he was legitimately concerned.
No, he was. So he was concerned, not necessarily the first time. Like he was concerned a bit, but he knew he was okay. He was concerned the second time. And that little spot that he has with the Undertaker, that's not in their original plans. He did that to give Mick time
Right.
because he didn't know how badly he was hurt. And Mick Foley is just someone who loves the business so much, loves performing in wrestling so much that he was not going to stop. You were not going to stop that match until he got everything that he was supposed to get in.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about having a tooth pressed through the roof of your mouth and coming out of your nose.
Yeah, that fall through the cage, that's not supposed to happen like that.
Bro, I can't even fathom. Like, I've had, if you've ever had just a tooth pulled, right? Even if you were unconscious for it, right? When you wake up from that shit hurts
Mhm.
a lot.
Yeah.
So imagine that rather than having the thing pulled out, the thing gets pushed up into your sinus cavity.
Yeah.
That amount of pain is not something that a human being should endure or be capable of enduring, especially then going, we hadn't got to the thumbtacks yet, man.
Yeah. And Taker, of all people, who is old school as they come, as you can see, he was even telling Mick, let's go home. Stop this. Let's go home. He was like, nope, we're getting to the tax. That was, I just don't understand. And dude, think about this. He fell through the cell again. Like, how did he not die? How did he not die that second time, dude? Because if you look at it, his legs are crossed when he like lands, and that's usually a sign of okay, he's dead. Like he's discombobulated, basically.
Right.
But yet somehow he gets up and he's walking and he finishes the match. And it is one of the greatest matches of all time. I mean, it really is. And
Yeah.
you have to say that it is. Is it a 5-star classic? Hell no. Does it matter? No. It's just it's good stuff.
And I mean, let's just destroy the idea right now of the Dave Meltzer 5-star classic.
No,
Because wrestling to me is about storytelling, and
yes.
the story told in this damn match is so incredible.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit if anybody hit a fucking Canadian destroyer off of anything. I don't give a shit how many of the 37,000 moves that these guys know was done in this match. I don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
The athleticism, the fact that Undertaker had a broken foot going into this, the storytelling, the amount of pain that Mick Foley endured, the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin could not even pop the place after.
No. Like
I,
and the fact that we still talk about this match to this day.
dude, they will be talking about this match after you and I are dead.
Yeah,
Like, this match will live on. It is, like I said, to non-wrestling people, it's one of the most famous matches out there. And even, and I mean, to wrestling people, it's of course one of the most famous matches out there. But it's just not looked at it with the same reverence as any of the others that I mentioned earlier on, because it's a Hell in a Cell match, and Mick Foley almost died, and neither one of these guys look like bodybuilders, and it
and
just
but here's the thing that's so mind-boggling to me, and it's the same thing that puzzles Mick Foley as well in ways. He's like with that, like the first, even the first time he went off the cell, like the first time in the match,
yeah.
like he said, with that one move, everything I did up to that point seemed null and void, basically. Like everything after, like everything before that was now the least crazy that he's ever done.
Well, because this match, so you talk about the building somebody. This match did a couple things. Number one, it established Mick Foley as like the toughest fucking person to ever step foot in a ring.
Yes.
Because you're watching this and you're like, any one of the five things that happens to Mick in this match should take someone out and put them in the hospital.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Undertaker, which to just to a mark, right? Pun intended, haha, because he's Mark Calloway. Uh, so to a mark, you look at this match and it's like the Undertaker did all these things to Mick Foley. You do not fuck with this person. I mean, and I remember watching this as somebody who was completely dumb when it came to like the business, and you're like, the Undertaker is fucking terrifying. You know?
Yeah. No. I agree. I was terrified of the Undertaker as a child.
Yeah, because you're like, this dude. If you stand up to him, this is the kind of shit he will do to you.
And he was dead. He's
Right.
a dead guy. But he was so convincing that he was a dead guy.
Right.
He's
It's the
the only,
greatest gimmick. I mean, it really is.
well, see, is it the greatest gimmick or is he one of the greatest?
It's both. It's
Because
both.
dude, if they had given it to anyone, it would not have lasted 25 years.
Right. Yeah. Dude, so many people have tried to copy it.
No, it's not going to happen.
You remember Kevin Thorne? You remember that shit?
Oh, that was so stupid. Oh my god.
Where he tried to be the vampire or whatever.
And
Dude,
in ECW.
oh, who was that guy in WWF for a little while that they tried to make like the anti-Undertaker? Like he came out in the white suit.
Oh, Mordecai.
Yeah. He sucked too.
He only lasted like 2 SmackDowns because people were just like, nope, not gonna work.
Yeah. It was dumb. But yeah, so we get to where, he recovers from this match. Now we have the Sacco introduction because Sacco came after this.
With another brilliant segment on Raw where Vince McMahon is in the hospital because Kane and the Undertaker killed
Yes.
him. And Mick Foley comes in, and that's some of the funniest stuff. But then Austin comes in, and the bedpan thing, that's still one of the funniest moments I've ever seen. And but it was badass at the same time. It was funny but badass because Austin was that. Like, dude, that was just good television.
The fact that like him and Austin were like trapped in that back room the whole time, like cutting up and shit, was hilarious.
Yes.
And that he like completely made Austin break back there with the sock puppet and everything. I mean, Mick Foley is one of the few people that really like Austin really had to try, and he even cracked him a couple times.
Yeah.
And the Sacco puppet is like the last. I mean, that's the last. As Mick said, that's the last missing piece of Mankind. And they did the Rock and Sock connection, which they didn't really talk about in this, but I mean, that was a big thing. They came back for WrestleMania later to do it again.
Yeah.
and I mean The Rock being The Rock.
But
um,
you want to know what's funny about all this? They did mention though the rivalry that him and Rock had, because the rivalry that they had was brilliant.
well,
Um,
I mean, you had to because one of the things that a lot of people have seen, is Beyond the Mat, and nobody's ever gonna forget that scene from Beyond the Mat where he hits him with the chair over and
oh,
over and over and over.
yeah, dude. I mean, I look at that back and I'm just like, oh my god, dude. Like they should have not done that.
Yeah,
I get what they were going for, and and here's what sucks: the matchup is really good.
it is, but like, it doesn't age well knowing what we know
No,
now.
no, it does not, and especially like his family being
Right.
there. That was just it was just not good. So I'm glad that they don't do stuff like that. Um, I think one chair shot to the head is okay. I don't like, but 10 over and over again like that. And the fact of that would obviously not be the only other time that they would do that. But it's funny that they have this A&E biography and they didn't mention this. They didn't mention his game-changing moment in the Monday Night Wars.
You mean with the title win?
Yes.
Yeah, and Bischoff spoiling it.
Look, and I get it because look, Mick Foley, kind of gets pissed when they talk about this and stuff like that. But I get what Bischoff was going for.
Yeah, it wasn't personal against Mick. I mean, it just wasn't. I mean, I know that's a very Eric Bischoff thing to say, but
It wasn't, but here was the thing. I don't think Bischoff thought that Mick Foley was a big enough deal for
right.
that to happen. Like obvious. So it was an error in judgment, basically.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I would do it. I would do exactly what he did.
Well, there you go. If you were in his shoes and everything like that. And here was the thing. So Mick Foley wins the title. They didn't stay for the whole thing. So they saw the match and then they saw him win the title, but they didn't stay for the whole celebration. They basically turned back to WCW. And what do they see? The finger poke of doom. So
Yep.
so think about this. You just saw this awesome match. Like, I mean, if you go and you watch that moment, it's not just the moment itself, it's the match. Like the matchup is great with DX being in his corner, the corporation being on one side, Stone Cold. And look and listen, they just saw Stone Cold get the biggest reaction of all, like that pop is still played to this day.
Yeah.
Like people still say that that is the biggest pop of all time. And then Mick wins the title, gets an even bigger pop as well. So the place is just going nuts. So you think about this. So you just see that, and then you go, okay, now let's see what WCW's got because there's still time left in their show. And then they see the finger poke of doom.
Yeah.
Not a good combination.
It really wasn't. I mean, you would think that they would have done something else. I mean, but I mean, that I don't want to get into like the consequences of that. I mean, really, the moral of that story is, do not, do not, um, give people creative control ever over their characters.
No, and I agree. But dude, again, this is where Mick Foley has some of these best matches, man. Like
He does.
his matches with Rock, the one at Survivor Series before that was amazing. The one here was great. The one at the Royal Rumble, even excluding the 10 chair shots, that was not good. But even the you remember this one, the halftime Super Bowl,
Yep.
the halftime heat, the empty arena matchup. I don't
I
care what
love that.
it says. I loved it.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, in 2020, there was about 700 more of those. But it is what it is. That match was amazing. Like that was incredible, and it was a brilliant marketing move
Yes.
on their part to do it because it was better than any halftime show I've ever fucking seen. Uh,
And
so
it was during a really big game. A lot of people watched the Super Bowl, and they did make a big and here was the thing: that same night, they also aired that Attitude commercial,
yeah,
and
yep.
that commercial is brilliant.
I don't want to gloss over this at all because I think that this is something that I guess they do kind of give him credit for it in a documentary, but I think he doesn't get credit for this a lot. Is Mick became a best-selling author right after this,
Yes. No,
and
they
he
didn't give him enough credit.
before this, you did not have all these wrestling autobiographies,
No.
but after Mick's book, there was a huge just avalanche of books. You have the Jericho series of books, a trilogy of books. Uh,
DDP.
DDP. Bischoff had his. It was later, but
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold, Bret
Rock.
Hart, Ric Flair had a book. Flair's book was fantastic. I
Boy,
mean, he had a ghostwriter because, as we have kind of found out later, Ric Flair can't read very well, but that's neither here nor there.
but this was the thing. Mick Foley was the first one to write his own book.
Right. And he didn't, he had editors, but he didn't have ghostwriters. Like,
No.
those are his words in that book.
Yeah, and he is an amazing writer. Like
Yeah.
he is just such a talented dude. I remember that book. Like I believe I still have it, and I think it's in storage or it's at my house in Augusta, one of the two. But I remember that book, man. That book is like that was a book I actually sat there and read. like like my parents had a hard time getting me to read stuff, but once I read that and a few comic books, I could get into reading sometimes.
Yeah.
Like Mick Foley is just he's brilliant. And this really put him not just in obviously the wrestling fans love Mick Foley. This put him in the mainstream eye though, cuz I remember when this book came out, this was when like he started appearing on like the Tonight Show, MTV. He started, appearing not just Austin, but it was The Rock, Mick Foley, Undertaker. Like this was when wrestling was booming.
Yeah.
So this was when he really got into the mainstream eye. But, the first time, he sees that retirement is on the horizon at this point, right? He even mentions this in his other documentary. And he's like, look, I love being funny. I love being entertaining. I love the Mr. Sacco. But if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out how I came in, and that's hardcore. He wanted to be known as the hardcore guy. He wanted that to be the lasting impression, which is why those matches with Triple H are so brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they really did. I mean they had incredible matches, but the brutality was there. If you look at that Hell in a Cell match that they had, it reminds me a lot of the Triple H Undertaker Hell in a Cell that they had later.
Yeah.
The brutality there, and you look at, I mean, Mick put his body through so much, and I mean it shortened his career. It did. There's no doubt about that. He talked about feeling 85 when he was, right after he retired.
Yeah. But I mean, like he still did some stuff with TNA and he came back as well. But dude, I gotta tell you, he has one of the best matches on one of the best pay-per-views which is Royal Rumble 2000.
Yeah, I agree. That I mean that was incredible. That was such a great match.
That street fight, dude, that was where like I became a Triple H fan. I was like, okay, like dude, and isn't it crazy how Mick Foley had these chemistry or had this chemistry with people that you would never think he would have chemistry with? He had it with The Rock. He had it with Triple H. He had it with Sting. He had it with Big Van Vader. You know, he had all this chemistry with these people that you just look at it and it's just like there's no way that Mick Foley is going to be able to keep up with this guy or this guy is going to do what Mick Foley wants to do. But that's Mick Foley.
Yeah, yeah, and you know he went to Ring of Honor briefly after he retired.
Yes, he did.
Interacted with AJ Styles a little bit.
Yep.
Ricky Steamboat was over there, but I mean I gotta talk about the return. I think the way they brought him back into WWE, that storyline. I mean, I could not write that shit.
With him
That
and Orton.
Yeah, well, so the way that they did it, you know, originally was they had him come in and referee the
But
Hell
you
in a
hate on
Cell,
Orton.
huh?
But you hate on Orton.
I do hate Orton. I think he's absolutely fucking terrible. But I did not feel that way then, because he was fresh in 2003 and 2004 and 2005. But the guy, instead of evolving, he's devolved. He does less now. He's phoning it in. And don't get me wrong, I know he's just trying to, he's trying to lengthen his career. But it's like, dude, just make your money and go home then. Like, get out of the damn way. I mean, the dude's literally been on TV every week for I don't know how fucking long.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make this about Randy Orton. But the storyline, he comes back. The way they bring him back is just as a special referee for the Hell in a Cell between Nash and Triple H, and they're like, okay, so watching this as a fan, you're like, oh, that's cool. Mick Foley's back as a special guest referee. Oh, they're gonna retire the hardcore title, and then Orton and Ric Flair beat the bejesus out of him. And this was also around the time that Flair's book had come out. And in Flair's book, he talks about how he did not see any value in Mick Foley whatsoever. And I remember this being a big thing. This is like right around the time that like the internet wrestling community became more of a popular thing for like
Yeah.
viewers, and like people started reading that shit, and
Yeah.
that shit was all over the dirt sheets and everyone was talking about it. And so it's like, okay, so there's legitimate real life heat here, and you build this up into him. You also tie this into Orton had the Legend Killer thing going on.
Yeah. But not just that, him and Ric Flair had an amazing I Quit match.
Yeah, yeah, they did.
Like, think about that though. Ric Flair and Mick Foley, an I Quit match.
Yeah, but that backlash match, I mean, with Orton, I mean, even Foley has said that he considers it like some. It depends on what day you ask him. Some days he'll say that's the best match of his career. And I mean, it's hard to overlook the Hell in a Cell, but damn it, that match with Orton is good.
Well, that's why it's so hard to pick with Mick Foley, man. Because I could give you several. The Hell in a Cell match, yes. But I even love the Buried Alive match with him and Undertaker. And I don't necessarily like that match concept, but the way that those two did it, I liked it. I like that matchup. I love the matchup with him and Shawn Michaels. I love the matchup with him and Austin at Over the Edge at 98. I still think that is one of his best matches. But this matchup with him and Orton, it was incredible. He was able to bring out Cactus Jack to its fullest on that night. And it was just so good. And you know something? I was thinking about matches of Mick Foley's that I hadn't watched in a while or hadn't really ever seen. And you know something? I need to go back and watch that match. So I think I'm going to do that after this. And so I'm going to go back and watch that matchup. So here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. All right. I'm going to challenge you to go back and watch the over the edge 98 match.
Okay. I'm gonna watch that, and I'm gonna watch the Backlash match.
All right, well, that's fine. I don't care, but go look at that matchup from '98 and tell me if I'm wrong. Don't look at it from look at it from a story standpoint.
Of course,
And
I always do.
I'm talking about even the entrances.
Oh, I always watch entrances.
Okay, well then you're gonna have a ball with these.
I'm big on entrances. I really hate when companies, people that like indie companies that like post their matches on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
I hate when they cut the entrances off.
Well, they have to because a lot of the times they use music.
Right.
Not
I mean, I get that. I get
I
that.
think is the stupidest thing because I don't see how people are actually listening to the song.
Well, so here's the thing: is a lot of times with us, we do have some people that use copyrighted music on viral, but a
Yeah.
lot of times with us, what we'll do is we will use like the instrumental version, like with no lyrics in it. Like Sean, for example, is one of those people. Um, if somebody uses something that's like heavily copyrighted, that's typically what we'll do. If it's from a lesser known artist, we usually don't worry about it because those people aren't the people who are dicks about your stuff being out there.
Yeah,
But
I just think that that's complete asinine. But dude, I'm encouraging you to go do that, and I'm gonna watch the backlash match. But another matchup that was great as well was the matchup with him and Edge. Like,
yeah, I mean, yes,
I mean, that matchup, holy shit. Like,
yeah,
and think about this, he had never really had a WrestleMania moment.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's true. That's very true. He had always ended up doing something ridiculous at WrestleMania or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, their match at 22, so good. I mean, I remember that, watching that, and I really enjoyed that match. I mean, he has so many bangers, and just because, it's easy to overlook Nick
Yeah.
as one of the greats, but he really is.
I
And
mean,
I think the biography does a good job of talking about that.
yeah, I agree. And they don't mention a lot of his TNA stuff, but I'm gonna mention it because I do think he had some good stuff there. The rivalry between him and Abyss, I thought was really good.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had some good stuff. I mean, I think he's an entertaining character. I said I would tell this story. So they before COVID, they used to do a Legends of Wrestling show in Augusta every year, and the last year that they did it, which I guess would have been 2019. Um, Actually, this was probably before that though. This would have been, I think, 2018 is when this probably happened. But Mick was one of the guests there. They had Mick Foley, Eric Bischoff, a couple people like that there, and they would have local indie talent come in and kind of pad the card out because a lot of the legends that they had there, can't work a match anymore, or they were in like a tag match, something light. And they actually, interestingly enough, had a little segment at the beginning um, between Bischoff and Foley because, at one time they were opposing GMs,
Yeah.
which was an entertaining storyline to say the least. Um, and so they did like a little kind of flashback to that, which was cool. But being with Viral Pro, we actually were brought in. They actually used our ring. And so we were brought in, and we would set the ring up, and we would work the event. So all of us would kind of do something there at the event. And one of the things that our crew would do is we would kind of be the handlers at these guys' tables, and they were like, "Well, whose table do you want?" And I was like, "I can pick anybody." And they were like, "Well, yeah, I mean, you got like the most experience in the business. So I was like, well, I mean, obviously you're gonna put me with Mick then, and they were like, you got it. This was a huge mistake. It was a great day. I mean, it was a fucking amazing day, but Mick Foley was by far the most popular guy there. So every time somebody comes up and they want a photo with them, an autograph, whatever, you have to like orchestrate the whole thing, and they hand you the phone, and So I took like 1,700 photos of Mick Foley in one day. I mean, it was very interesting because there was like a billion people at his table,
That's awesome.
and like it was really funny because there's a line, like all the tables are in a row, and like his line is like back as far as you can see, and then like some of the other tables have like one or two people at them, or some have like 50, or some have 100. And Bischoff had a long line too, but Bischoff's line is like half the size of Foley's. So when Bischoff's line dies down and there's only like a couple people walking up every now and then, Foley still has like 400 people in his line. And the wrestling show is going on, and there was a match, I think like Saeed and somebody else that I wanted to see that I missed. Oh, it was Darby Allin and Saeed.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, I want to see this damn match. and it's going on, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. And then once the match is over, now I'm like, Eric Bischoff is literally sitting 20 feet from me, bored out of his mind, not doing anything. And I'm like, all these people just want to talk to Mick Foley, and I'm like, I just want to go over here and talk to fucking Eric Bischoff. And finally the line died down, and like, I don't know if Mick is just old now, or like if he's because I mean I got to hang out with Mick Foley all day, which was really cool, but it's like it was like he needed help plugging his iPhone up. I mean, and interestingly enough, there was somebody there that I guess Mick, when they had done one of the Iraq um, tours, where they would go overseas to visit the troops or whatever.
Yeah.
And Mick had gotten hurt or something, and so the only thing over there, hospital-wise, is a military hospital. So Mick had gone to a military hospital, and there was a veteran there that he had, I guess, been across the room from and met, and she was at this event. Which this is a wonderful, like, heartwarming story, except for the fact that there were 1,400 people waiting to meet Mick Foley, and he had like a 30-minute conversation with this lady. And then he gets up from the table and he takes her to all the other tables and like butts in on the conversation and like gets the people's autographs for her. And I'm just like, I can't stop him. He's Mick Foley.
I know. Like,
I mean, what am I gonna do? Throw him off a building? Oh wait, that's not gonna fucking work. So what? What do you do? So I'm just like, and I got all these people looking at me, and I'm just like, look, man, I just want to go talk to Eric Bischoff. Don't look at me. I don't know. I mean,
that's
I don't
that's
work here.
that's tremendous.
It was such a crazy, just absolutely just mind blowing day. Uh, Man, it was such a weird day, but it was cool. I mean, it was definitely an interesting experience. But he's very much Mick Foley. I mean, the guy that you see when he's completely out of gimmick. I mean, that's him through and through.
Well, dude, here's one of the things that they didn't really talk about, and one that I felt like they really dropped the ball on this show. The Holy Foley show. I'm like, why didn't they do more of that? There's shit like, okay, you know how the Miz and or you know how the Miz and Maurice have uh Mr. and Mrs.
Yes.
Like, look, I think that that show is actually pretty good.
Yeah, me too.
Um, but I think that Holy Foley should have just as many seasons as that,
Yeah.
because I thought the concept of that show was hilarious.
Yeah.
And it was reality mixed with comedy. it had the best of everything. Like it showed Mick Foley in a different light, but yet they still could revisit the hardcore legend aspect of him. And I just thought like the combination was great. And it only lasted one season. And I'm sitting there just like WWE Network, you need content. So why not this?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what was wrong with the show that they couldn't keep it going?
I think it's the traditional Vince McMahon. After all this time, still trying to be right about Mick, for some reason.
Well, that's stupid. You need content for your network. You need new shows, and
Right.
it's like, look, I've always said that the WWE network has the advantage over ESPN, over a lot of networks like that. Okay, because here's the thing, right? With the WWE network or with the WWE in general, they can literally do any form of entertainment that they want to.
Right.
They can do the ESPN shout interview style shows if they want to, but then they can also give you different style shows featuring their characters that they've had over the years.
Right. I liked the Edge and Christian show they were doing for a while.
I did too. I
I mean,
thought,
obviously they can't do that anymore.
well, yeah, obviously they can't do that one, but I mean, that one was good. Why did they shut that down?
I always thought that they should have really embraced um, the New Day and also Cedric's video game stuff. That they were doing on YouTube and whatnot. A lot of that stuff had a ton of views. It was funny. It was entertaining. I thought that they should have brought that on
They do
and done
have
a.
down on the network.
Oh, it's on the network now. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Just that goes to show you how much I keep up with WWE, folks.
And the New Day has a podcast.
But if it's the same as it was when they were doing it themselves, then that's fantastic.
I mean, I guess it is. I don't really know. I mean, pretty much, I guess it's just a little bit better production quality.
Yeah.
I get like I don't really follow that show or anything like that, but I always thought with the WWE network that if you're going to do a live stream like that and you're going to have a 24-hour live stream, then you have to have like programming times.
Yeah.
You just have to. I don't care who you are. But I could go on with that another day. But dude, man, I just think Mick Foley is. I think he's got to be in the conversation as the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think um I don't think on any given day if you asked me who the GOAT is, I would say Mick, but I do think he's in the
Right.
conversation. But I do think he's in the conversation.
As
I
like some of the tops.
I think he's better than fucking Kenny Omega all day every day. Twice on Sunday.
Well, I will agree with that. But I like Kenny Omega, okay? Like
Well, this episode has been going on for about an hour and a half, man. So it's probably time to go ahead and wrap it on up. Uh,
just because I said that.
yeah, that's the sign that we've been going. But no, I think this was a great A&E documentary. I liked this one. We've talked about it. I really liked this one. I really liked the Booker T one, and I really liked the Piper one. Other than these, I think they range from boring to awful. And I am glad we only have one more left to do. Spoilers for that episode. I am going to go the fuck off on that episode because of some key information that's in there, or rather not.
Well, and I figured you would, but I will say this: I am going to watch a lot of his matches because I am a fan of his in-ring work.
Yeah, I like Brett. Now, I I spent a lot of my life not liking him. I like him more now. He does complain a lot, but shit, I do too. so I can't really hold that against him. Uh, it is what it is, right? I like him as I think he's a good storyteller. I like his in ring work. I really loved him as the WWF champion
Yeah, and
because he took it so seriously.
yeah, he did. And dude, I just like a lot of his matches. I
Yeah.
really do. Like, I could go and watch it's just like Mick Foley. I could go back and watch their matches. Just if it has Mick Foley in it or it has Bret Hart in it, I'm like, okay, I want to watch it.
There is one match I don't want to watch, and that's the Iron Man match with him and Shawn.
I'll agree with that, actually. I really will.
I'll watch the finish because the finish is great, but the hour leading up to it isn't. I mean, it is once, right? It's definitely like that's one of those matches where it's like when you watch it the first time, you're like, this is great. But if you already know it's gonna go the hour, and you know that what the finish is, you're just like, I just want to see the damn finish.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more when we talk about his documentary, but I I didn't think that they should have done an hour-long Iron Man match. I
Right.
thought that they should have just done a regular match because
Yeah.
I felt like they took the suspension out of it.
Yeah. I agree. I
But
mean,
go on with that, on the next episode.
yeah, yeah. We'll talk. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But
Where you're
yeah.
gonna go off on it though.
I just will. I'll name drop it again. He's not gonna see this. And today because it's not gonna go up till tomorrow. But today is a special day because it is the birthday of someone who's been on the podcast twice now, of Joe Brown from Suplexes and Microphones.
Hey,
So
Joe!
shout out to him. He's like 75 or whatever. Um,
He could still kick your ass.
oh, he could, yeah, dude. Joe is like he has training in like excessive training in close quarters combat, firearms, and MMA. I would not mess with the dude.
No.
I've also seen where he's gone to the range, and I've seen what his like sheet looks like. And dude, you do not want to like, yeah, you just don't. Uh, but I always pick on him about being old. We do have a bunch of cool stuff coming up. Like I said earlier, we have the Dark Side of the Ring Dynamite Kid, which I think we'll do that next. Because I don't want to do back-to-back biographies. The biographies are over once we do the Bret Hart one. I'm very much looking forward to that. But yes, check both of those out when they come out. Um, very proud of two of the last episodes we did. The Grizzly Smith episode. Really love doing that with Myron from Tapped Out Podcast. Speaking of Tapped Out Podcast, they just announced that for their 5th anniversary, they are doing a show. That's right, the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast is going to hold a sort of Night of Champions type special indie show. And they're going to have all different promotions from the Southeast involved. And I heard from a little birdie that Viral Pro is going to be involved in that. So, very cool thing that they're doing. And congratulations to those guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah, cool stuff, man. I'm sure, why don't we put this on the list? It's going to be available online. Why don't we review that show?
I'm down.
Yeah, I think it would be cool.
I am down to do that. We've got to do the China.
Yes, we have to do the China documentary, but I got to watch it first.
Yeah,
So,
so do I.
um, yeah, so we have a lot. We have a lot coming up, guys. Some very cool stuff up ahead. And then at some point, we're gonna have to do our Dark Side of the Ring season 4 predictions, but we will do that after the back half of season 3 because we got a nice crisp 14 episodes this year.
Yes.
So much stuff going on, guys. Caleb, as always, thank you for joining me for this. I know that you're probably way more prepared for me on this episode because you are such a Mick Foley fan.
I am, dude. Dude, how can you take three different characters from the same person but make them completely different?
Right.
Like, and none of them even sound the same.
And have them all be over. Like most guys can't come up with one gimmick that's over.
Yeah, he came
So
up with three.
right.
Like
So
he's brilliant. He's one of the best, man.
and I cannot think of any better way to end this episode than on that exact note. So thank you everybody. This has been an Evolved Review.